Hi there. Have you ever heard it said that the sea holds many mysteries? Well, it's true. How would you like to go for a swim and find a jewel cross just like this one worth $75,000? This is all part of a fabulous treasure that was lost 3 centuries ago when a Spanish galleon went down on a reef not very far from here. We've come to the island of Bermuda to bring you the story of how this treasure was discovered. First, we're going to meet one of the world's foremost experts on finding sunken treasure. We'll go with him and his companions to the bottom of the Spanish Main. Here in the domain of the shark, we'll explore coral reefs and dig for treasure. Not only dig for it, we'll find it. What you're going to see, filmed by the world-famous underwater photographer Peter Stackpool, is the real thing. For the very first time on TV, the actual discovery of Spanish treasure 5 fathoms down.
300 and 400 years ago, treasure galleons sailed the Spanish Main, loaded down with tons of gold and silver. The shoals and reefs of the western Atlantic still hadn't been properly charted. Danger often lurked just below the surface. Of the billions of dollars in treasure that left the New World bound for Spain, many millions never got there. How many ships went down in these waters? No one really knows. But they number in the hundreds, and we know that many had treasure aboard. The loot of a continent still lies under the waves, waiting for someone to come and find it. Storm clouds are gathering over Bermuda. Now we've come here to join a search for Spanish treasure among the reefs that surround the island. Our main worry right now is the weather. It looks as though we're in for a squall. But our host, Teddy Tucker, there in the center, is still going ahead with plans to investigate a wreck he's discovered 5 fathoms down. Next morning, the weather's still undecided. We leave Hamilton Harbor in Teddy Tucker's boat, heading for a spot in the reef some 12 miles away. Almost at once, we're caught in a squall. It's beginning to look as though we'll have to postpone the trip. But every lost day brings us closer to the hurricane season. So we keep going, hoping the weather will clear up. After a while, sure enough, the sun comes out. The water is shallow and clear as a window. Teddy and his companions searched the bottom for signs of the wreck. Oh, there it is. Believe it or not, that's our ship's anchor, especially adapted for use in the reefs. And down there under the water lie the remains of a ship, hundreds of years old. The first to explore the wreck are Teddy and his partner, Bill Lawrence. Teddy's been here before. He calls the wreck his Old Spaniard. He thinks it dates from the 1590s, but all we really know about it is that it's here, buried in a pocket of sand. Slowly, Teddy and Bill fan the sand away from the ancient timbers. Most of the fish you meet down here are friendly. Sometimes they're too doggone friendly. This fella gets to be quite a nuisance. It doesn't take long for the sea to pound a sunken ship to pieces. Timbers, cargo, personal possessions of the passengers and crew They're all scattered over the reef. We find encrusted cannonballs, even human bones. Down here, you're in a slow-motion dream world, where everything seems weightless. But there are dangers among the reefs, dangers like sharks. Still, the work proceeds. Most of what we find is encrusted with the deposits of centuries. We really won't find out what it is until later. Up at the surface, Teddy's wife Edna is in the water, keeping an eye on the boys. Uh-oh, Teddy spotted the shark now. Another shark this time. This one's coming in for a closer look. This fella's a good 8 feet long. He may never have tasted human blood, but a shark this size is at least a potential man-killer. Bill Lawrence starts for the surface. He's taking up a piece of unfinished lumber that the old ship carried as repair stock, and the sharks keep coming. More sharks. This part of the ocean's getting uncomfortably crowded. But something draws Teddy Tucker back down to the bottom. He's not ready to quit yet, sharks or no sharks. Meantime, Edna's climbed aboard the boat out of danger. The first clue, a glint of something bright. What is it? A golden cross studded with emeralds. Untarnished after nearly 400 years at the bottom of the sea. The sharks are getting more inquisitive. For all we know, they may be getting hungry. Teddy's on his way up at last. Teddy's other partners are his brothers-in-law, Bob and Don Canton. As soon as they get a look at Teddy's find, they begin to suspect that it may be the most spectacular single discovery in the history of treasure hunting. This is the moment that treasure hunters dream of. And there's no telling what else we may find until we break through the layers of ocean deposits that still hide some of the other relics. Everyone's feeling pretty well pleased with himself as we head back toward Hamilton Harbor. We still don't know much about Teddy's old Spaniard except that she carried treasure. This gold bar is just part of it. Now, although gold doesn't tarnish in seawater, silver turns to black, crumbling silver bromide. However, aboard this wreck were silver pieces of 8, discolored but preserved by a fluke. A gold coin was dated 1592, so the ship went down sometime later. Some experts say in about 1595. We're not even sure she really was a Spaniard. The cannon she carried even suggests that this was a pirate ship, and that all the treasure was in fact pirate plunder. We're on the island of Bermuda. Along with underwater photographer Peter Stackpool, we've come to share the adventures of Teddy Tucker, the world's foremost living treasure hunter. The faces and the equipment are the same as those we saw in the first part of the program. But this trip is going to be a little different. Instead of going after treasure, we'll watch Teddy and his companions carrying out a modern salvage operation. His goal on this particular trip is a steamer that went down back in the 1920s. He doesn't plan to float the whole ship. He just wants the propeller blades. After placing the charge of TNT that they hope will detach the blades from the shaft, Teddy and his partner head back toward the surface. Sharks will arrive pretty soon, attracted by the fish killed in the explosion. We'll have to wait for them to leave again and for the debris to settle. Then it's back underwater, and soon the first of 3 propeller blades is on its way up. The boys can expect to get $600 for each salvaged blade. It was work like this that first got Teddy Tucker started hunting treasure. He just sort of moved up from bronze and brass, gold and jewels. Teddy's interest in the past isn't limited to ships that were wrecked on the Bermuda reefs. If you visit St. Anne's Church in Hamilton, you can see that his family has been here for many generations. In fact, the first Tucker stepped ashore in Bermuda several years before the Pilgrims stepped ashore at Plymouth Rock. And since those days, Bermuda has seen a lot of colorful history go by. Spaniards had visited the island in 1543, but they left. No one came again until a ship was wrecked here in the 1600s. She was called the Sea Venture, and this is one of her guns. She brought the first Englishmen to Bermuda as castaways. Their survival inspired a permanent colony, and it also inspired a play by a man by the name of none other than William Shakespeare called The Tempest. Somehow Teddy's interest in the past always shows results in the present. Right now, he's doing something very unusual. He's squirting oil onto the ocean to calm the surface and give him a better view of the bottom. This time, there's no big mystery. We know all about this wreck. It's all that's left of a big French man of war. Her name? L'Hermine. This was a frigate with 2 decks of guns, about 60 altogether. She was a big, well-built ship for her day. But someone miscalculated her course. She hit the reef and went to the bottom in the year of 1838. There's a very large jellyfish. We don't expect to discover valuable treasure on the wreck of the French warship, at least not treasure in the usual sense. But we're going to try to recover some relics of historical interest. Some of her cannon, for instance. The big guns proved to be too big to haul aboard Ted's boat, and they're too long to drag across the reef, hanging from the treasure hook on the bow. But we found a smaller cannon, and we think we can save it. A ship's gun, underwater since Martin Van Buren was President of the United States. A ship called the Caesar was another victim of the Bermuda reefs. The Caesar went down in 1818, along with a cargo of bricks and grindstones. Teddy's idea is that genuine antique bricks and grindstones are just what the buying public wants to build patios with. So here we are, down among the brain coral and all that's left of the Caesar, collecting future patios. Incidentally, The Caesar had no more excuse for going to the bottom than the French ship had. There was no storm, no hurricane. The captain said that he just found himself among the rocks. Luckily, though, no lives were lost. With the treasure hunter's instinctive curiosity, Teddy is determined to make sure that he and his friends don't overlook a thing. He goes through the wreck with the diver's equivalent of a fine-tooth comb. But all he finds is some cochineal, a type of dye. It's still colorful even though it's almost 150 years old. Getting these things up to the surface is going to be no easy matter. Now, I know someone's going to ask if this patio paving idea really is a moneymaker. Well, Teddy says yes, at least it will be, as soon as he can find some reasonably inexpensive way to ship all this stuff over to the United States. Meantime, though, we've also found a collection of old bottles, relics of early America. And maybe someone can find a use for antique cochineal. Here's a new idea of Teddy's, looking for sunken ships from a balloon. Watching the experiment is Sir Julian Gascoigne, the governor of Bermuda. The whole idea is that you get a clearer view of the bottom from up there. Of course, there's one very important point. You have to stay up long enough to get a good look. Not this time. There he goes again. The unsuccessful balloonist is Mendel Peterson of the Smithsonian Institution in Washington, D.C. Believe it or not, the balloon really is a good idea for underwater archaeology. And since we don't have a supply of extra helium to make the balloon more buoyant, we'll just have to try with a lighter passenger, namely Teddy's wife, Edna. Unfortunately, our cameraman wasn't able to get any pictures from up there, but since this experiment, Teddy has spotted several previously unknown wrecks from the balloon. It's better than a plane because you can hover and take your time, and helicopter rotors churn up the surface of the water. We're over a reef 7 miles from shore. We've come out here to investigate the wreck of the San Antonio. Along with Teddy and Don Canton, we're going over a job that was first done way back in the year of 1621. That's when the Spanish ship went down. Her Spanish crew made it safely to shore. They asked the governor to keep the people of Bermuda from looting the wreck. He promised faithfully he would. But as soon as the Spaniards had left for Europe on another ship, the governor organized his own looting party and plundered the San Antonio himself. This ungentlemanly piece of piracy made him a very rich man. The question is, how thoroughgoing a salvage job did he really do here? At first, there's nothing but iron spikes used in building ships. Looks like treasure fever is contagious. Another of the iron spikes. Our friends have to sift through the sand almost grain by grain, and they find a few links of gold chain. So here, in this strange underwater world, the search goes on. And while the boys are hard at work, Edna takes a nap. The Tuckers' little girl, Wendy, is too excited for anything like that. And finally, she sees her uncle and her dad coming up with the results of their first look at the San Antonio. Leather shoe soles from the days of the Pilgrims. Pottery, too, a reminder of the simple, ordinary routines of shipboard life in those far-off days. Now a pair of Spanish daggers. There's jewelry, too, overlooked by the original salvagers nearly 350 years ago. Altogether, the San Antonio will give up $20,000 worth of treasure, including a pair of golden earrings that were buried 40 feet apart. Teddy Tucker might have cleared a fortune from his treasure hunting. Instead, he started his own museum and later sold the whole collection to the government of Bermuda for $100,000. That's just a fraction of its total worth. Not even considering the gold and jewelry, items like this inkwell from the old Spaniard. These ancient carpenter's tools are valuable as relics of a bygone age. They bring the dry facts of history to life. They put the age of exploration right there at your fingertips. One would-be buyer offered Teddy $75,000 for the jeweled cross alone. But here, too, value isn't just a matter of dollars or British pounds. Considered as loot, all this is a pirate's ransom. But it's also a chapter in the story of the New World, back when it was really new. It evokes an age of heroism and piracy on both land and sea. And there's more where it came from, according to Teddy. He's down there every chance he gets, looking for treasure, clues to the past, and true adventure.
Treasure hunting sounds like a boyhood dream, doesn't it? But as we've seen, it's a dream that can come true. Now, there's treasure to be found on both sides of the Atlantic. For example, in August of 1702, 17 Spanish galleons left the New World for Spain. When they got there, they discovered that Spain and France were at war with England and Holland. The enemy naval forces were looking for them. Well, the galleons sailed into Virgo Bay on the west coast of Spain, tried to hide out in an inner lagoon called San Simon Bay. It didn't work. There was a battle which the enemy won hands down. Now, 7 of those galleons were captured, but the Spanish managed to scuttle the rest of them, and they went to the bottom with 500 pounds of jewels and 500 tons of silver and gold. Since then, there have been, I would say about 70 full-scale salvage attempts, but only a tiny fraction of that treasure has been recovered. The rest of it, it's still there, waiting for somebody like Teddy Tucker or somebody like you. I hope you've enjoyed sharing this true adventure with us. Until we meet once again, this is Bill Burrud saying, may all your adventures be happy ones.